Hi guys, it's Lisa Unger, and I'm here for the next episode, for lack of a better word, of Three Good Things, where I talk to some of my author pals and we talk about some of the things that we're doing to kind of, give ourselves comfort and sort of, navigate these, difficult moments that we find ourselves in. So I'm here with two exceptional writers and two very good friends, Chris Pavone and Alafair Burke, both, Chris writes these super elegant spy thrillers, international. Alafair writes these really beautiful, character-driven, ripped from the headlines thrillers. And I'm a big fan of both of them as writers, and of course also as people, my friends. Hi guys, how are you doing?
Hi, good to see you.
Good to see you. So Alafair, where are you right now?
I am on Long Island in a place called East Hampton. So I have got the dogs out here. I feel very lucky to have a yard and a street I can walk on that's not a crowded sidewalk. So feeling pretty grateful about that.
And everyone's like safe and healthy and sort of muddling through.
Yeah, my husband's still working, but he works at the Metropolitan Museum of Art, and it's obviously closed. So he's basically just walking empty galleries, which I can think of worse jobs to have right now. So he's the only person getting his steps in right now. Like he just walks miles and miles.
He should do like a live stream.
He won't. He sends me. I get kind of basically a personal tour. Like he'll send me pictures all day long with like captions, like funny captions to go with the art. It's cute, but he won't let me post any of it. Like, so proper and appropriate.
Yeah, he is. He's very security minded.
Yes,
for good reason. And Chris, where are you right now?
I'm about 10 miles north of Alafair, but we're separated by 2 ferry rides and Shelter Island. I'm in a village called Orient on the North Fork of Long Island, where I've been with my family for 5 weeks now, I think. We left on Friday the 13th. We left New York City and moved out here, which we at first was only for spring break. Our kids were just beginning a 2-week-long spring break. But when we left, we packed up everything that we would need for months, really, with no specific intention to go back to Manhattan. And we haven't been back, and it looks like we won't for a while yet.
Yeah, what is the current thinking on when people are going to go back, or is there any current thinking on that?
I think there's I mean, for me, it will be a year and a half. For normal people, it might be like July. But I mean, if people are watching the briefings, all of the things you would need to start doing a gradual reopening, we don't have yet. So it's going to be a little while, I think.
Well, I think in many ways we're kind of, we're fortunate because we're writers and readers. Like for me, writing is always an escape hatch. I mean, it's kind of like the place I go to just disappear from whatever's going on. And obviously we're all readers first. And, all of us are readers first. Like that's where we fall in love with story, as kids, most of us, like in the pages of somebody else's book. So I think in that way, if you have that kind of ability to just lose yourself in a good story, that it's something that we all just kind of, should feel grateful for. So is there anything, starting with you, Alafair, anything that you're reading right now that's like really kind of transporting you, or something that you return to again and again when you need a little comfort?
Yes, I'm feeling the first few days I was out here, weeks, I was having a very hard time concentrating on anything other than a jigsaw puzzle and my television. But then our mutual friend, Michael Connolly, sent me a galley of his new book, Fair Warning. And I'm just the minute I opened it, it's new, obviously, so that's always exciting. But it's familiar because it's Jack McAvoy. It's the character from The Poet and The Scarecrow, and it's been years since I've had a visit from that character, and part of me was wondering, like, do I really remember that character? And like the minute I started to read the voice, I was right back in that world, and it was just kind of like something really familiar and that I have fond memories of from years and years ago, like kind of set in the not the present, like right now people still go out and touch each other in this book, but it feels very fresh and there's new storylines, and so I'm reading it really, really slowly because it's one of those things where I don't want it to be done yet.
So. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's such a great gift, as a reader. I think we're always like still looking for that moment when you open a book and you're like, oh, this is going to be so amazing, or like, oh, there's that voice again that I love. So that's always like such an exciting reader moment. Chris, what about you?
Well, I'm reading a bunch of things, but I also am having trouble concentrating. I'm also having a tremendous amount of trouble sleeping through the night. And I wake up almost every night somewhere between 3:55 and 4 a.m. It's a very narrow 5 minute.
High five! We can text each other. Always.
Can't sleep anymore.
Always when I get up.
And I'm not prepared to give up on sleep yet at that point, but I realize that I can't just lie there staring at the ceiling. And I don't want to wake up my wife by turning on the light. So I have an iPad that has a bunch of books loaded onto it that I've read before. And I keep dipping into 3 different novels by Sarah Gran, the series starring a detective named Claire DeWitt. And there's something to me really immensely compelling about her individual passages, that they're mystery stories, but I don't want to denigrate these books at all, but the mysteries are not the compelling part of it. There's something great about the language and the scene setting and the characters and the dialogue that I'm happy to just open a book almost at random and read 2 characters who might not even be major characters just existing in a scene together for 10 minutes, 15 minutes. And it's very reassuring language. And Sarah is just a couple of years younger than me from the same place. We both grew up in Brooklyn, and there's so much about her life growing up there it's obviously foisted onto fictional characters, but it's so familiar to me about what it was like to be a teenager in New York City in the 1980s, and the way people spoke and the way characters moved through the subways in Washington Square Park and the East Village, and this soda machine at a pool hall called Julian's that used to exist on East 14th Street, where if you pressed the right button on the soda machine, you would get a can of Budweiser. And I've never come across anybody in my life other than Sarah Gran and my pool hustling Uncle Paul, who showed me about this soda machine in a pool hall where you could get beer from a soda machine. It was fantastic.
So I love that series. It's really good.
I haven't read that. I am definitely gonna.
Oh, you would love it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I definitely am. That's exciting, and it's kind of neat too. It's like kind of like you're returning to your childhood, Chris. Like it's just like a safe space, for you to go back to, as opposed to the crazy space that we're totally in right now.
Yeah.
So also, most of us are, people who love stories are also, we love movies and television as well. Alafair, is there anything that you're watching right now that
everything? I was talking to my brother the other day, and he's kind of bouncing off the walls, and he said, I'm going nuts. He goes, I mean, there's only so many hours you can watch TV. And I was like, no. I'm made for this moment. But I was trying to think of what I wanted to recommend, because I'm sure people have probably, like, anyone following you on Facebook probably knows about The Stranger, and they probably know about Bosch. But I think some people don't know about You. It's a show called You, Y-O-U. Yeah. And it's like a cross between Gossip Girl and Dexter.
Yeah.
And it's set the kind of Dexter type character, although he's not Dextery, as he's not, well, I won't. The main character is he runs a bookstore, an independent bookstore. And so I think for people who like books, like, there's a lot of mentions about like the culture of a bookstore and literary references, and it's where he tends to meet the women he becomes obsessed with. And the character, though, a lot of there's voiceovers in it that sometimes aren't effective in television shows, but these are really effective. But just his inner monologue that goes throughout the series is just really compelling. Like, it's dark but really funny, and it was one of those, like, my husband enjoyed it too, which is very uncommon that we like the same show. And we watched it all in like one big gulp. It's so good.
Yeah, I watched it too. I loved it. I thought it was super, super engrossing, like very, very engrossing, and just kind of
just crazy enough that you're like, oh my God,
yeah, it was great. I loved it. I know it's based on the Carolyn Kepnes books, which I'm embarrassed to say I have not read, because I almost always like make a point to read a book before I watch the show. But I really enjoyed the show a lot.
Right.
It's very great. Hey, Chris, how's it going? What about you? What are you watching?
Well, I just was reminded of something I saw a few days ago. With my family, we're rewatching The Sopranos.
Oh yeah.
Which, has its entertaining moments and its really inappropriate moments for sharing with 16-year-olds. So I know that
it's a bada bing.
Being recommended.
There should be a no bada bing scene version for watching with your children.
True. Except the Bing is such a ridiculous workplace. But what I want to recommend is actually something a lot less well known than The Sopranos, and bizarrely enough, also like Alafair's TV show, includes Penn Badgley, who's the star of You and is one of the many characters in this TV show called Margin Call. Not TV show, I'm sorry, movie called Margin Call, which is about 10 years old at this point and is loose basically on the collapse of Lehman Brothers. And it all takes place over the course of like 12 to 24 hours, during which this investment bank realizes that they are about to collapse. And it's this moment of people figuring out how to deal with this immense crisis that's not only going to affect them directly, but affect the whole world. And it reminds me a lot of sort of this moment that we're in now. And there was a point a few months ago when the leaders in this country should have, could have, probably did recognize what a bad situation we were about to be in. And a bunch of men simply sat in a room and decided not to really do anything about it. And similarly in Margin Call, a bunch of men sat in a room and decided to cover their own asses and to make it best for them and throw the rest of the world over. That resulted in what went on in 2008 and 9 and beyond. And I think it's a fascinating, it's a great movie. It's incredibly efficient. It has a lot of characters all interacting over the course of this really short amount of time. And there's so many great individual performances by people who are only on the screen for like 5 or 10 minutes at a time. Jeremy Irons is spectacular. Demi Moore is great. Stanley Tucci, Zachary Quinto. It's just, everybody's great in it. And there's no real star of the movie. It's just a bunch of people in this really bad situation, which is not exactly an uplifting message at this moment, but nevertheless, really, really compelling to watch.
And I think it's interesting too that like sometimes we wind it like there's supposed to be this like, sort of bunch of people binge watching like all of these, like shows about pandemics and, all of that. It's like, you almost there's part of you as a storyteller that wants to turn to these kinds of things because you're trying to like in some way understand what's happening or find these like slices of understanding. And like maybe that's like one of the reasons why we turn to those types of things in these difficult moments. Another thing that we turn to in difficult moments is food. You guys are both cooks. I cook. My husband cooks. So we've been doing, pretty much nonstop cooking now for, I guess about five weeks. And so is there anything that you guys find yourself turning to for a little comfort, something that you, or something that's just easy and that works every single time? Anything like that? Alafair?
So everything I cook is from a recipe, but I'm very good at picking out recipes. So a recipe that if people don't know about it, is what do they call it? It's Allison Roman's spicy white bean stew with broccoli rabe from the New York Times.
Oh,
and when all of this for early March, second week of March, when people are like, load up your pantries, but don't hoard. There you go. I've never been a pantry keeper because I live most of the time in a pretty small apartment in New York. So I don't keep like tons of like canned beans sitting around. So I did what I was supposed to do. I went down to the store, I got the pantry things. I'm like, now what do I make with these things? And it turns out you could make this spicy white bean stew with broccoli rabe. And it's one of those recipes that almost doesn't feel like a recipe. It's because for someone like me who wants to know exactly how much chicken broth is called for, it's like, you can use a cup, you can use 3 cups. It's like, you can use a ton of broccoli rabe, or you can use a little bit. You can use cilantro, or you can use parsley. Like, you can put an egg on it, or you can not put an egg on it. But for some reason, like, no matter what I do to it, it always like tastes delicious. And my husband is, I tend to get sick of something if I eat too much of it over and over again, except for spaghetti that I can eat every single day, it turns out. But my husband, it turns out, to put this white bean stew. It's like the minute we're out of it, he's like, can you make more of the white bean stew? So I highly recommend it. My one thing is I do throw meat in it. It's a vegetarian recipe, but we put a little bit of Italian sausage in it just to add a little more spice and to make it a little heartier. But I highly recommend it.
Perfect. Chris, what about you?
Well, these days I'm not interested in anything that's quick and easy, because I spend all day long I'm in my kitchen right now. In one corner of the kitchen where I'm sitting is a built-in desk, which is my desk. My wife, we converted a bedroom into her home office upstairs. One of my kids has colonized the dining room to be his office. Another kid is in the den for his office. I spend all day long in the kitchen. So I don't need my recipe to be quick and easy. So I'm cooking things that take all day. And one of my go-tos in all situations is coq au vin. And I guess it will stop being a go-to when it gets hot out, because you don't really want chicken braised in red wine when you're sweating. But in the meantime, it's still pretty chilly here, and I'm making it. You marinate chicken the night before. Again, we've got nothing but time. So I'm marinating things all over the place. I'm brining things. I'm slow cooking beans. Today I have like a Alafair's white bean stew. I'm making cassoulet, which began last.
I love your cassoulet.
You still my heart.
I want to be quarantined at the Pavone house.
Well,
I'm coming over. I'm breaking quarantine.
At a gym that went out of business a few years ago. So we stopped running into each other there. But I'll tell you, there's nothing that wrecks a workout more than cassoulet. And I made, I think, 16 duck leg confit the other day, and served a few of them on Tuesday, and then a bunch of them are going into this cassoulet. But the coq au vin, which is chicken stewed in red wine, you marinate it the night before, and that's the key to it, is just soaking it in red wine overnight. And then it's just basically an easy chicken stew that I think is spectacular. And I make it all the time. And I particularly make it when I need to do this thing that we're not doing these days, which is feeding a crowd. But it's a super easy thing to do, to feed a dozen people coq au vin. But it's going to be a long time, I guess, before I'm feeding a dozen people anything.
Well, hopefully we'll be 2 of those dozen people the next time. Next time it comes up. I want to thank you guys both for being here with me today and sharing your stuff with our reader pals. And stay well, stay safe, and that goes the same for all of you guys out there. We hope you're reading well, cooking well, and being well. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Lisa. See you, Chris.